Hey everyone, what's up? This is Zach and I am here with an album review for you guys. This time I'll be reviewing the second studio album from thrash metal legends Megadeth, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? And I do think that this is easily one of Megadeth's best albums, and I don't think any fan would really argue with that. Definitely a great album and definitely a classic in thrash for sure. Now, for those who don't know the story of Megadeth and how Megadeth formed, of course, Dave Mustaine used to be in Metallica in the early days of Metallica. He got kicked out of the band and decided that, you know what, I'm just going to form my own band. And he formed Megadeth. He got a group together and they released their debut album in 1985, Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good, which I think is a very strong debut album, and it's one of their most raw sounding albums too. I dig how heavy it is and just how ticked off Dave even sounds throughout that album, and I just think all in all it is a solid debut. And then the year after, 1986, they released this album, Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? So this album celebrates 40 years this year in 2026, so hard to believe that this album is 40 this year. This album still has that raw thrash metal sound, but it does sound a little bit more polished than their debut album, and it is a little more, I guess, mainstream sounding, but not as mainstream as, say, albums like Countdown to Extinction or Euthanasia or even Cryptic Writings. Just a more polished sound, but still not straying away from that raw thrash sound that was from their first album, of course. So I think they just basically took what worked with their first album and just made it even better. I would say that Peace Sells is an improvement. And I even think that the songwriting has been improved on this album, and even the way that these songs are structured and the way they're made, it's just very well done. And I do think that Peace Sells, But Who's Buying is one of Megadeth's best albums. And I've even seen some Megadeth fans say that this is their favorite Megadeth album. Now, for me, it's probably my second favorite. Rust in Peace has always been my favorite Megadeth album, but Peace Sells, But Who's Buying would be very close in second. So just going over the track listing here, we've got Wake Up Dead, The Conjuring, Peace Sells, Devil's Island, Good Morning Black Friday, Bad Omen, I Ain't Superstitious, and My Last Words. Now, this CD copy that I have here, this comes with some previously unreleased bonus tracks, which has basically some mixes of some of the songs off this album. So that's pretty cool to get some bonus material if you have this version of the album. I would say some of the highlights for me off this album would be Wake Up Dead, the opening track. Definitely one of my favorites off this album. I really dig the guitar work, and the solo work especially stands out. Really good stuff. Peace Sells, the title track, probably being one of the highlights for me off this album as well, as I'm sure it would be for many others as well. It's probably the most accessible sounding song off this album. Of course, it's an iconic, not just Megadeth song, but an iconic metal track. You have Dave Mustaine basically asking these questions like, what do you mean I don't believe in God? I talk to him every day. What do you mean this and that and the other thing, It's just very iconic and very memorable for sure. And it's got some great riff work as well. Devil's Island, I think, is another really good one off this album as well. Of course, you have Dave repeating Devil's Island in the song. It's very memorable, very good. And then Good Morning Black Friday, I'd probably say, is one of the highlights off this album as well. That's another very good one. And then My Last Words is, of course, a really good closing track as well. I've always really liked My Last Words, so yeah, definitely a great album from start to finish. I think Dave sounds pretty good vocally on this album. Now, when it comes to Dave Mustaine, he's one of those vocalists that I feel is an acquired taste. I know that some people kind of stay away from Megadeth or avoid Megadeth because of Dave Mustaine's vocals, but I think his voice is really what makes Megadeth Megadeth, if that makes sense. And of course, the guitar work throughout this album is just awesome. And of course, this album was released in the 80s. This was back when thrash was at its peak. This was when thrash was huge, and this is early Megadeth, which you can't go wrong with. I mean, now we all know that Megadeth have recently put out their final album this year, and I think the album is just all right or decent. I know that album is very mixed among the fan base, but I think the album is just decent. But I think all Megadeth fans should be in agreement that Peace Sells, But Who's Buying? It is a classic. It is a great album for sure, and again, arguably one of the best albums in thrash. So let me know what you think of this album if you've listened to it, and if you have not listened to this album, definitely give it a listen if you have not listened to this album yet. So if you are someone that is new to Megadeth, you want to check out their music, you want to check out an album from them, would this be a good starting album? Yeah, I would say Peace Sells, But Who's Buying is a good starting Megadeth album. In fact, this probably would be the album that I would recommend to people that want to check out the bands. Probably this album, Rust in Peace, and Countdown to Extinction. So there you go. But if I were to give Peace Sells, But Who's Buying a rating or a score, I would give this album probably a 9.5 out of 10. I think it's a great album, and again, one of Megadeth's best. So with that being said, thank you for watching, take care, and have a good one.